Hello, and welcome to Come Play With Us, a spooky storytelling podcast. My name is Leila, and I'm joined by my evil twin,
Ruby. We're actually both the evil twin. We're both writers with non-writer day jobs. We believe in the power of great storytelling, so we've invited guests with the challenge of weaving a tale about real-life hauntings and paranormal activities with the sole purpose of scaring the shit out of us.
We'll rate them to see how they've done. Our ratings go a little something like this: scared shitless, some chills, and I think I'll be able to sleep tonight.
So, hi everyone. It's us again. This time, I am going to scare my friends, which includes Ben.
Can we specify who this I is? Because this I is Leila.
Yes.
Because our voices are basically the same.
People can't tell our voices apart. So, it's I, Leila, and I, Leila, am joined by Ben Murga, who recently gave us a spooky story about the Black Angel statue. And then, of course, Ruby, my co-host.
Hello.
And this one I've heard a couple times, and it's really freaked me out, and I'm going to be really curious what conclusions y'all come up with. But before we do that, I'm in a half dark room with one lamp on versus two, so it's half dark. So I still like to be able to see. And
I see it's so bright in there.
It's just the camera.
So it's dark in mine. I'm gonna always have a dark room. Everyone knows.
Yeah.
I don't really know. At some point, we're probably gonna stop telling what we do. But I've got two artificial candles lit. Got to keep it safe, especially because we recently heard about a horror. We recently had a story told to us about houses burning down. But I've got a spooky red light in the background. I've got my curtains shut. It's daytime, but it's dark in here. I'm actually super alone because Todd is traveling, so I better be able to sleep tonight. We'll find out. But oh wait, no, he's getting back late tonight, so I don't.
He will be able to sleep today.
He'll scare you late at night.
Yeah. And then Ben, we can see you, but it looks like it's dark behind you.
Yeah, it's mostly the light of the monitor. It's pretty dark. The weather is much different outside than it was last time we spoke. So the experience is entirely different. And I just
Has it increased by 1 degree?
In order to match continuity, I have lit a single black candle behind me to match the spooky atmosphere.
Nice.
All right, well, I will dig in. So this is about the lead masks cave.
Lead masks? Like
yes.
a mask that you put?
Yes. So, and I'll list my sources. Wikipedia, today I found out, and anomalyinfo.com. There's also some parts that were pulled from the Flying Saucer Review, which, despite its name, was actually a credible enough periodical back then in the 60s. So this is one of the most baffling unsolved cases ever recorded. And to this very day, it still raises more questions than it does answers. It really forces you to think about spiritual possibilities that may exist, and we don't know it yet. And this case could have led to some discovery if it was solved, but we will never know what those were. So on the afternoon of August 20th, 1966, a young boy was flying a kite on Vintum Hill in Rio de Janeiro when he came upon the bodies of two dead men. They were lying so serenely, their hands behind their necks, like they were just lying on the ground, sky gazing. They were lying side by side, partly covered in grass. Each of them wore a nice suit and a waterproof coat on top of it. The strangest thing, and there will be more strangeness to come, was that they both wore lead eye masks, which basically were made of lead, and they looked like large sunglasses that covered the top part of their faces. He thought maybe they were asleep, But when he returned 2 days later, there was an overpowering stench of rot and putrid flesh, and they were still lying there. And so he ran back into town and reported it to the police. So a day later, because the location of the hill and the wild terrain that led up to it caused some delay, a small team of police and firefighters arrived. They investigated the bodies, and there were no immediate signs of trauma or evidence of a struggle. And even still, they had been out in the elements now for a few days, and there were no signs of animals disturbing their bodies, as if they didn't even want to come near them. Next to the 2 dead men, there was an empty water bottle with a receipt for the bottle and a packet containing 2 wet towels. One man had about $4,000 in local currency in his pocket, and the other one had $157,000 in a plastic bag. So that would probably be like $300, $400 today. And then there was the notebook that they found with the bodies, which had inside a cryptic message or what looked like instructions. Translated in English, it said, 4:30, be at the specified location, 6:30, ingest capsules, and after the effect, protect metals, await signal mass. The notebook also listed electronic part numbers, which people speculate must have been encrypted codes. It was written in algebraic numerals. And though there was a mention of capsules, none were found on the bodies, which must mean that they were already consumed, as stated in the note. So the 2 men were Manuel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana. Both were in their 30s, married with young families, were well respected in their communities, and known to be electronic technicians. Given the evidence and from interviewing the locals, the police were able to piece together their last days. 3 days prior to the discovery, on August 17th, Manuel and Miguel left their families, saying they needed to purchase some materials for work and were going to Sao Paulo to buy a car. They were last seen by their families boarding a 9 a.m. bus, and at that time were said to be carrying about 3 million of the local currency, which I think is like a couple grand in like today's currency. They didn't go to Sao Paulo. Instead, at 2 p.m., the bus arrived at Niterói, which is where the hill is, where they were found. It suddenly began to rain, so the 2 men ran into a store and bought raincoats. And then they went to a bar and chilled there for a little bit and bought a bottle of mineral water and collected a receipt for it, because back then Brazil had these recycling laws and you could bring back your water bottle and recycle it. So they collected a receipt for it to bring it back.
Wait, really quick, what year was this again?
Yeah, I was just going to ask the same.
This is 1966. Ahead of its time. And then at the bar, witnesses said that Miguel seemed really nervous and kept checking his watch, and both of them seemed really distracted and preoccupied with something. So then a couple hours later, around 3:15, they set off for the hill, and at one point they hitched a ride in a Jeep, which was occupied by a few people, and those people were likely the last few to ever see them alive. By the time the autopsy was finally conducted, the internal organs of the 2 victims were too badly decomposed for reliable testing. And there's also apparently a backup at the coroner's office, so because of this, testing for any toxic substances was not conducted. And the cause of death, because there was no signs of struggle or anything like that, was ultimately ruled as cardiac failure. And you would think the baffling mystery would just be closed right then, but there is much, much more that gets unraveled.
But their bodies were charred, so would it...
They weren't charred.
Oh,
I didn't say that they were charred.
Wait, why did I think they were charred?
Because they were wearing masks and staring at the sky. Anyway.
Maybe you were thinking of the decomposed part?
I just made my own story.
They were kind of like melted. Yeah, it's like they were badly burned, but the grass was perfectly clean.
Okay, so they were...
there's more weirdness to come, though.
Yeah.
So on August 17th, the same day that the 2 men went up that hill, a lady of high social status named Senora Gracinda Barbosa Coutinho de Souza. I think the longer your name, the higher your social status. Like, she is up on the highest rung there.
0.001%.
Yeah. She saw an unidentified flying object. She had been out with her 3 children driving around when they all saw in quotes, an oval-shaped object of an orangey color with a band of fire around its edges, hovering over the top of a hill and sending out rays in all directions. She stopped the car and they observed it for a few minutes, rising and falling vertically, and it was right above the same hill where the bodies were found, on the same day that the bodies went up there. After her reported sighting went public, more people felt emboldened to come forward, especially given her social stature. It was a UFO sighting, and back then and even now, it was a taboo subject, so generally the government discouraged those kinds of sightings, but because of this woman's report, more people came forward with the same sighting. And even more baffling, 4 years earlier, in 1962, a man named Hermes, who was a TV technician, had been found dead on a different hill, also wearing a lead mask. This hill is about 176 miles from Windham Hill, which is where our 2 dead men were found on. And there was no more information provided, and so later on, his case was reopened because of the similarity. There was no reported indication that it was even related to the 2 men. So what was going on, and what happened to Miguel and Manuel?
And how is that not related? They're all wearing lead masks and they're found dead on a hill. And they do they're electrical. They do
well, supposedly work. There's some cover up. There could be some cover up trying not to make them connect.
Leila, was there a description of the lead mask?
Yeah, so it's basically, it looks like sunglasses without the sticks, and it just covers like half your face, but the rest of your face is exposed. So it's really more like really large lead eye covers.
Is it like a metal band across the eyes?
Yeah,
like a visor
with,
kind of?
Yeah, kind of, with like, these kind of goes down like glasses, yeah.
On a scale from 1 to Geordie LaForge, what are we talking here?
Geordies are too thin.
Too thin. These are much larger.
These like cover half your face.
Okay.
I don't know what Geordie LaFin is, but I just found a picture
LaFin
that I'm going to drop right here.
Well, don't look up stuff because then you're gonna get spoilers.
No. It's just an image. It won't tell you anything. It won't tell you anything.
Yeah, that's them. That's their pictures. And that's their masks. They look like Men in Black. They look like Men in Black.
They actually do.
Okay. So, during the police investigation, Manuel's wife alerted the police to a man who she said had a big argument with her husband before he died. He became an early suspect, even though he was a friend of both of the deceased. His name was Elcio Gomez. The police tracked him down, and what he told them was shocking. He said he and the 2 deceased men were all part of an exclusive group of scientific spiritualists who attended seances regularly and believed in the confluence of electronics and the spirit world, and how technology can be used to reach the other side. The 3 regularly tried different electronic experiments. One of these was made a few months before Miguel and Manuel were found dead. Elcio had built a device in order to contact spirits on Mars. It was not a success, and the device accidentally exploded in Manuel's garden, but it left behind a strange white residue that they found to be of interest. Elcio also told them of an incident that had occurred a few months before the 2 men died. The 2 men had invited a few others, including Elcio, in their scientific spiritualist group, to visit a nearby beach. Just as Elcio arrived, he witnessed an intensely luminous object that descended from the sky and hovered over the shore of the beach. It stayed for 5 minutes and then began to ascend until there was a sudden blinding flash of light and an explosion that shook buildings 15 kilometers away. And there was tons of reportings about this explosion. Fishermen had seen the same blinding flash of light in the sky, and the same white residue that had been discovered by Manuel and Miguel after the first explosion from their experiment was also found on the beach. So during that strange event, the Navy had intercepted a mysterious set of messages on June 12th, the day before the beach explosion, and it was transmitted by stations using identifications that didn't actually exist. LCO suggested to the police that this was an intentional visit by spirits to the spiritualist group. And then, of course, some people say UFOs or aliens. And then on top of that, Miguel apparently had told his sister a day or two before the beach explosion that he would soon be carrying out a very important mission, and she had to keep it a secret and not to tell anyone. So back to their death and the police investigation. So the investigation turned up that the masks had been made in Miguel's workshop, and there's remnants of scraps and tools that were found, along with a book on scientific spiritualism, which mentioned masks, intense luminosity, and accompanying spirits. So during this time in Brazil, there was spiritualism was like a religion. And in the mid 1800s, like 100 years before, there was a scientist named Sir William Crookes who studied spectroscopy, and his work was the foundation of nuclear physics, which later enabled the discovery of X-rays. But he was also a scientific spiritualist, and his studies of the occult are related to his work with radiometry, and both of those involve the detection of previously undiscovered forces. So what he's known for is, because he was kind of seen as a hack when he went into spiritualism, but what he's known for scientifically is he was a pioneer of vacuum tubes, and he invented the Crookes tube, through which you could view radiant matter like electrons and things like that. So he believed if radiant matter like electrons were detectable, so was matter from the other side. And he wasn't the only one. There were other scientists that believed that there were ways to detect the other realm through scientific means. So it isn't a surprise that Manuel, Miguel, and Elcio and their group were all influenced by these scientists, and they were attempting their own experiments using technology.
But they weren't scientists.
So Elcio and other members of the spiritualist group all had alibis and were nowhere near that hill, so they were all dismissed as suspects. The police completely rejected the supernatural theories put forth by Elcio and other locals, and instead just came up with a couple theories. And one of them was Miguel and Manuel were involved with smuggling electronics equipment, which had been difficult to come by in Brazil at the time, so smuggling items like that was common. They also, one of their theories was the deaths could have been possible suicide pact, but they had a receipt for the water bottle, and they definitely intended to come back. They wouldn't have collected it if they weren't intending to return the bottle. There was also the theory of a robbery gone wrong, because they had started out with 3 million of the local currency, and they were left with way less. But then why wouldn't the robbers just take it all? Why would they just take some of it? And they did spend some of it, going to the store, going to the bar, things like that. And then finally,
do we know why they took that money out?
No. They told their families they were going to go buy equipment and a car. And they did go to an equipment store and walk around, but never bought anything. And then they didn't buy a car. And then finally, the police figured maybe the men overdosed on LSD, because LSD was also being used by spiritualists to try to contact the other side. And we don't know what those capsules were, but they theorized that it was LSD, but LSD overdose deaths are very rare. So to this day, the mystery is still unsolved. And even weirder, the handwriting that was inside the notebook that they found with the bodies that had the schedule of, when to take the capsules, when to wait, it belonged to neither of them. So we still don't know what happened to them. And the question arises, did their experiment to reach the other side fail miserably, and they accidentally overdosed on the mysterious contents of the capsules, or die of the elements on the hill? Or did they finally do it? Did they figure out how to make contact with the other side, and they were intending to come back, but something held them back instead?
I mean, I think technically you make contact with the other side when you die, so
mission success.
Mission is a success, but also, like, clearly you're not going to take money out if you're planning on committing like a group or friend suicide. Like, you wouldn't do that.
Suicide pact.
Suicide pact.
Suicide.
Friend group suicide pact. So you wouldn't do that. So, like, I'm already ruling that out. But it's really interesting because, already there is a lot between science and electronics and spirit world because, you know, we use EMF readers, and EMF readers can detect some funky shit. You know, Leila and I do ghost tours, and we use EMF readers, and it's creepy. There's some, it's creepy what it can pick up. We've used voice box recorder
Spirit
device,
box.
spirit box, thank you, and picked up, you know, piano music in a room that has a piano.
Well, it's
You
known
know,
today that spirits use technology to contact us, or that we can use technology to contact. So that was something that they were doing, but they were doing it through some sort of experiments that had to do with these
which means
blinding flashing lights that they had to wear these masks for.
to me they had made some sort of contact, and maybe UFOs, or what we see as UFOs, or what we think are UFOs, are actually the spirit world, you
Yeah,
know,
there's
and
two
it's
ways that
not
the story
aliens.
is told. One
Yeah.
is that they were trying that it was UFO sightings, but I don't believe it. I feel like it was more natural phenomena that is less even less explained than UFOs, which I feel like is easier to explain almost. And that it was due to their experiments and what they were trying to do. Because when electrons were not invented, when they were when they were when they were discovered, it was spooky to people.
Little things like, what the hell?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's
matter
Before
another,
and
Einstein invented
energy.
electrons.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can't see energy and matter, so it's almost spooky. But I can definitely see how scientists would go into the realm of, spiritualism, because a lot of this is so unexplained and so beyond our comprehension and unseen. They're unseen forces that, of course, there could be a way to apply the same, you know, scientific method to seeing if
well,
ghosts exist.
I think it makes sense because we use science to explain what we do not know, and the spirit world is something that is mysterious that we do not know. And I've also heard sometimes, like with the whole UFO sighting stuff, is like maybe when people thought that they saw spirits or ghosts, it was extraterrestrials, you know. And it's interesting because I don't know when Ray Bradbury wrote that story of the ghosts that live on Mars, but you know, they're extraterrestrials, but they're also ghosts at the same time. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
I think the way that you describe these little pieces is as you drop more notes, Leila, I'm like connecting a line of logic in my head when you talk about like the writing being different on the journal and stuff. That to me sounds like these guys got a lot of money. They went out to a druggist, a specialist that had some experimental medications to do some sort of psychedelic trip that was maybe a combination of LSD and something else. And he says, hey, you know, just be careful, make sure to do this, make sure you take it just like this. And he writes down for them on their journal, hey, this is exactly how much you take more, it might be dangerous. And these guys are like, we can handle it, we've done whatever. And they go up on this hill and they're like, hey, we're in nature, we want to experience this trip. We also have this mask that's going to make sure it keeps it on our face, and we're going to try to stay in this one spot and not wander off. Sounds like two guys trying to have a spiritual journey, and they messed up on the dosage potentially.
although the druggist wouldn't have written instructions and timings of when to go up to the hill
And put the mask on and
and
stuff.
when to
Like
put the mask on.
they were timing something out. And then
Okay.
again, like, because of the fact that their experiments and these sightings created really blinding light, there's a reason why they had to wear those masks, and it was to protect their eyes.
And the
Maybe
animals didn't want anything to do with their bodies.
maybe the person who wrote those instructions was the guy who died on the hill later than the other hill, 150
That was
miles
3
away.
years. That's 3 years before.
Before? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
he's back from the dead. I don't.
So there's
You want
something.
ghosts? You got ghosts.
Something with this.
Ben's the skeptic in the movie that the ghosts all just like come after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So something. There was something going on with with people in South America who were scientific spiritualists who all basically had similar notes, and it was trying an experiment that had to do with going up on a hill, probably taking some pills of something, tripping out, and making contact with the other side, whether it's like the other side extraterrestrials or other side spiritual realm. But he essentially, what it looked like, was was doing the same exact experiment. And the reason I mentioned a cover up is because the police was just like, nope, we're not, like, there's no connection. It's just these guys just accidentally took too much LSD and died. They had heart attacks because they took too many drugs. You know, even to them, so much of it was unexplainable, but they were just like, this has nothing to do with these experiments or spiritualism.
Wow.
And I think they were really hoping to nab that guy. They were really hoping to have a suspect, and then he had an alibi. He wasn't even there. It was many, many miles away. So
Ghouls and ghosties.
yeah. So I'll remind everyone of our ratings. So the lowest rating is I think I'll be able to sleep tonight. The medium rating is some chills. And the highest rating is scared shitless. So who wants to go first?
I think
I do.
first.
Oh,
Okay. We're gonna go ahead, Ben.
Ben, you're a guest, so you get to go
Yeah, that's
first.
true, yeah.
I shouldn't even have asked.
Yeah.
Definitely some chills. If there was more like hard evidence to make it really scary, or more foreign strange objects that would connect different things, I think I'd be scared shitless. But it's just enough mystery to set this sort of spooky tone and atmosphere, and these like really weird loose connections of these masks and these instructions on how to do it at a specific time, specific place. It just begs more questions than it does answers. So yeah, definitely some chills. That was great.
And you're definitely like trying to poke some holes in the lead
Yeah.
mask.
Yeah. Poke all the holes, find the answers. Yeah.
So to me, it's scared shitless. Which is funny because I actually I already knew about this.
Oh.
So because Leila, you told me about it.
Oh, I forgot I told you.
You told me about it like you told me about
I
it
didn't
like
tell you all the details. Told you about like.
Told me about it like I think maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, and you told me actually I forgot all the details actually,
Okay.
but the thing I didn't forget was the 2 bodies on the hillside that for some reason I had decided were charred. So that's the image that I had. So and that the two when you first told me about the 2 men with their with the lead masks, found dead on the hillside that no one, or on top of the hill that no one knows how it happened. That has stayed with me for years. So it's never left because it already is so bizarre and creepy. And sometimes like you don't even need to know anything about the spirit world or whatever. Just these 2 men wearing black lead masks are just found dead side by side with a water bottle, a receipt, and some cash. That's already just and their corpses are intact because even the animals don't want to eat them.
It's a striking visual.
And a handwritten note that's cryptic. So like already that's just so creepy. um and then just all the other details of they were trying to make contact with the spirit world. To me it means that they had made some contact and they were trying to increase the contact or maybe open a door. And we've all seen the horror movies, we've heard the stories. You don't want to open that door, and maybe they did and they paid for it, and the families paid more. And so that all to me definitely. So yeah, even though already heard about this is definitely a scared shitless for me. I was getting chilled on the line here. I actually have goosebumps right now just thinking about these 2 fellas.
My theory is that they did it. They figured it out because they were doing this for years. They were doing experiments forever, and they were doing a lot of research too. So I wouldn't be surprised if like Sir William Crooks's and there's other people too that they got a hold of this research or like looking into it. I feel like they did it, but they got trapped or they couldn't make it back to their bodies, and their bodies just like.
We've talked about this a little bit in some of our, and I'm going to basically just creep myself out some more, but we've talked about this a little bit in the podcast, and you've heard most of the episodes. Ben, things happen. Things will happen. Things will happen. Things will go weird during our podcast. For some reason, the spirits always like kick me out. We're talking. I don't know if you heard the one about the Monte Cristo homestead in Australia. Yep. Every time we talked about this little girl that was caught in a photograph, we would get repeatedly kicked. The screen would just go white. It was so bizarre. We would just get kicked out. And we're like, what's going on? And it happened more than one time. So, Leila she said, by talking about the spirits, we are opening a door, you know. And it's a little bit like, okay, right now they're just kind of like messing with us, but like it's a little bit like, be careful what you wish for. It's like, you know, you find the genie lamp and it grants you 3 wishes, but you always pay. They're always mean wishes, or you know, like you always you say, you know, I want to be famous, and then you die tragically and you're immortalized as a statue, you know. So like, you know, so
Yeah, I
to
think that's
me,
why I like those movies. Those have that monkey paw element to it,
Yeah.
where
yeah,
it's be
Monkey
careful
Paw.
what you wish
Like
for.
Needful Things.
So
Yes.
yeah,
Mr. Needful.
Mr. People from
Rick
Rick
and
and
Morty.
Morty.
Oh, I don't remember that shit. Maybe I never saw that one.
You
That's a
should
good
watch it.
one.
It's pretty good.
But to me, it's like, you know what they did. They opened that door, but be careful what you wish for. You
Yeah.
don't get what you want without having to pay for it in some way. So
Yeah.
at least they did it. You know,
I feel like they did because it's so
it
baffling.
was probably the culmination of their lives. So they
Yeah.
did it. And maybe
And
the
they thought
masks
they'd
are
be back.
they can't. Maybe that they're not. It should not be able to see the spirits. Not maybe.
Well, it's to
You know,
protect their eyes from, you know, the blinding light that they were going to experience. And they did. There was blinding, flashing light, which was seen by that the high social lady, whatever.
the high
The
class
lady
lady,
who had a high social status saw the
Based on the
blinding
length
light.
of her
the
name.
noble woman.
Yeah. She saw the blind flashing light and this object hovering over that hill while they were up on that hill lying there. So something did happen to them on that hill.
That's a really cool kind of first account.
Yeah.
First-hand account.
Yeah.
Of her
Describing this
kind
like
of
disc.
recounting that experience of what she sees from a distance about the
Yeah.
hill. That adds like a super interesting, mysterious layer to it. I like that a
He
lot.
won't say creepy, but he'll say interesting. We'll get you next
Somewhat
time, Ben.
chilling. Somewhat chilling.
We'll come for you next time.
Yeah.
You're
Got
both
some
the evil
chills.
twin.
Got some chills.
Thank
That was
you.
great.
Thanks for listening, and thanks for being
Thanks,
honest with your
everyone.
ratings, and thanks for joining us, Ben.
Thank you
Till
so much
next
for
time,
having me.
we're gonna
Back another
scare you.
Thanks
day.
for having some chills, but
We're gonna get you. We're definitely gonna get you next time.
I look forward to the next one. Thank you.
yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like to get in touch, you can reach us at podcomplaywithus@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from our listeners, so if you have real-life ghost stories or paranormal encounters and you think it'll scare the shit out of us, please send them in. Until next time, goodbye!
Bye.